The human cargo ship Resilient Dawn moved slowly through the dark space of the Kepler Nebula. Its metal hull showed deep scratches and dents from space rocks that had hit it during the long journey. Blue coolant leaked from the engine pipes, making pretty crystal trails behind the ship like frozen tears. Captain Lee Jun stood on the bridge, looking at the computer screens. The numbers were all bad. Food supplies showed 12 days left. Water had maybe 15 days. Oxygen was running low too. His dark eyes stayed calm, even though his heart was beating fast. He had been a ship captain for 20 years, but this was the worst situation he had ever faced. Behind him, the bridge crew worked quietly. They all knew how bad things were. Nobody talked about it, but everyone could see the fear in each other's eyes. Park Hannah, the ship's engineer, walked up to the captain. Her face was thin from eating less food for 3 weeks. Her hands were dirty from working on the broken machines all day and night. She held a small computer pad with more bad news. "Captain," she said in a quiet voice, "the life support system is failing. The air recyclers are working at only 60%. If we don't get new parts soon, we'll run out of clean air in 3 days." Lee Jun nodded slowly. He had expected this news. Everything on the ship was breaking down at the same time. It was like the universe was testing them to see how much they could take. Kim Tae, the weapons officer, looked up from his station. He was a big man with strong arms, but now he looked tired and weak. "Captain, our defense systems are barely working. The energy shields are at 30% power. The laser guns have maybe enough power for one small fight." The captain walked to the big window at the front of the bridge. Outside, the nebulous gas clouds moved like slow smoke in many colors. It was beautiful, but also dangerous. They were lost in this maze of gas and space dust, far from any help. Dr. Choi Min came onto the bridge. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but now she looked very worried. She carried a medical report in her hands. "Captain, I need to tell you about the crew," she said softly. "Half of them are getting sick from not eating enough. Their bodies are getting weak. Some more starting to have trouble thinking clearly. Need real food, not just the emergency pills." Lee Jun closed his eyes for a moment. 12 people depended on him to keep them alive. 12 good people who had trusted him to bring them home safely. He had promised their families that he would take care of them. Now it looked like he might break that promise. The supply run to the outer colonies had gone wrong from the start. Pirates had attacked the supply station before they arrived. The colonists had nothing to trade. Then space storms had damaged their ship and pushed them off course. Now they were lost, alone, and dying slowly. A loud beep came from the sensor station. Koyuna, the communications officer, looked at her screen with wide eyes. Her face went pale. "Captain," she said in a scared voice. "I'm detecting a large ship approaching our position. It's moving fast and heading straight for us." Everyone on the bridge stopped what they were doing. Lee Jun walked quickly to the sensor station and looked at the screen. A red dot was moving toward them. The computer showed it was a big ship, much bigger than theirs. "What kind of ship is it?" Captain asked. Yuna typed on her keyboard, trying to get more information. After a few seconds, she looked up with fear in her eyes. "Battle cruiser, Captain. The computer says it's the Bone Render. That's Captain Yoon Seok's ship. He's one of the worst pirates in this part of space." The bridge became very quiet. Everyone knew about the Vortex. They were tall, strong aliens who lived by stealing from other ships. They never showed mercy to anyone. When they attacked a ship, they took everything and usually killed everyone. Nam Jae, the tactical officer, checked his weapon systems. He was young, but smart about fighting in space. "Captain, we don't have enough power to fight them. Our shields won't stop their weapons for more than a few minutes." Lee Jun stood very still, thinking hard. Tae could try to run, but their engines were damaged. The Vorthok ship was faster and would catch them easily. They could try to hide in a nebula, but the gas clouds would not hide them from good sensors. The communication system made a loud noise. A rough voice filled the bridge, speaking in broken human language. Human ship, this is Captain Yoon, Sioka, the Vorthok vessel Bone Render. You will stop your engines immediately. You will open your cargo holds and prepare to transfer all supplies to my ship. You have 5 minutes to respond, or we will destroy you. The Vorthok captain's voice was full of confidence. He sounded like he had done this many times before. To him, this was just another easy target. Lee Jun looked around at his crew. These people had worked with him for years. They trusted him to make the right decision. Park Hannah had 2 children waiting for her at home. Kim Tae was going to marry his girlfriend next month. Kuna sent money to her old parents every month. They all had reasons to live, but the captain also knew something that the Vorthok pirate did not understand. When humans were pushed into a corner with no way out, they became very dangerous. Not because they were stronger or smarter, but because they would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Lee Jun walked to the communication station. He pressed the button to send a message back to the pirate ship. His voice was calm and quiet, but there was something cold in it that made his crew look at him with surprise. Captain Yoon, Seok. This is Captain Lee Jun of the human vessel Resilient Dawn. I'm going to give you one warning, and I suggest you listen carefully. Let us pass peacefully, and we'll forget this meeting ever happened. That's the only offer you're going to get. The communication channel went quiet for a moment. Then the Vorthok captain's laughter filled the bridge. It was a cruel sound, full of mockery. You think you can threaten me, human? Your ship is broken and weak. You have no weapons, no shields, no hope. Surrender now, or watch your crew die. Slowly, in space, Lee Jun closed the communication channel. He turned to face his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for orders. In their eyes, he could see they understood what was about to happen. The Vorthok captain had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He had cornered a human ship that had nothing left to lose. 3 sectors away from the dying human ship, an old Centauri merchant named Rackstool sat in his trading post watching the news feeds. His 4 eyes moved quickly across the different screens showing shipping reports from across the galaxy. He was very old, even for his long-lived species, and had seen many things in his 200 years of trading. When the emergency signal from the human ship appeared on his communication system, all 4 of his eyes stopped moving. The message was simple, but it made his blue skin turn pale with fear. Human vessel under attack. Supplies critical. All ships maintain safe distance. Rackstool has 6 arms, moved quickly across his control panels. He sent warning messages to every ship and trading post he knew. The message was always the same. Stay away from the Kepler Nebula. Humans in danger. Repeat. Stay away. His young assistant, a small creature named Piptel, looked confused. Master Rackstool, why are you so scared? It's just one small human cargo ship. The pirates will take their goods and let them go. Yes. The old merchant's eyes became very sad. He had seen what happened when humans were cornered before. It was not something anyone forgot. Young one, Rackstool said in his deep voice, sit down. Let me tell you why we never, ever corner a human ship that is running low on supplies. Meanwhile, on the Vorthok battlecruiser Bone Render, young warrior Kefler was getting ready for the boarding attack. He was checking his weapons and armor, excited about his first real battle. The other Vorthok warriors were laughing and making jokes about how easy this would be. But old Grokmar, the ship's weapon master, was not laughing. He sat quietly in the corner, staring at nothing. His scars told the story of many battles, but his eyes showed something that surprised Kepler. The old warrior looked afraid. "Weapon Master," Kepler said, walking over to the older Vorthok. "Why do you look so worried? It's just one small human ship with broken weapons." Grokmar looked up at the young warrior. His voice was quiet and serious. "Have you ever heard of the ghost ship incident, young one?" Kepler shook his head. He had heard the name whispered by older warriors, but no one ever told the full story. 20 years ago, Grokmar began, I was serving on a hegemony battle fleet. We found a human research ship called the Scientific Endeavor. It was alone, far from help, with only 30 humans on board. Their ship was damaged, and they had no weapons that could hurt our 3 battlecruisers. The old warrior's hands shook. As he remembered, our admiral demanded they surrender. The human captain, a small woman with gray hair, sent back a message. She said the same thing your human captain just said. "One warning, let us pass, or face the consequences." Kepler listened with growing interest. What happened then? Our admiral laughed, just like Captain Yoon. Seok laughed. He ordered all 3 ships to surround the humans and prepare to board. That was his mistake. Grokmar's voice became very quiet. The humans did not try to run. They did not try to hide. Instead, they turned their entire ship into a bomb. Trading post. The old merchant was telling a similar story to his assistant. "The humans have a saying," Raxdul explained. "They say death before dishonor, but it's more than that. When a human is cornered with no escape, they don't just accept death. They make sure their death costs their enemies everything." Blessed eyes were wide with fear and curiosity. "But Master, that makes no sense. Why would they kill themselves instead of just giving up?" Raxdul, as for eyes, looked at different screens showing human colonies and trade routes. Humans were everywhere in the galaxy now. They were traders, explorers, engineers, and farmers. Most of the time, they were peaceful and friendly, because young one humans believed that some things are worse than death. They would rather die free than live as slaves, but more importantly, they want their enemies to remember the price of threatening humans. On the Bonrender, Grokmar continued his story. "The human research ship came straight at our flagship. We fired all our weapons at them, but they had put all their power into their shields. When they got close enough, they detonated their fusion reactor." Kepler's face showed shock. They destroyed themselves. They destroyed themselves and took our flagship with them. 3,000 hegemony warriors died in that explosion, including the admiral. The other 2 ships barely escaped. Grokmar stood up and walked to the window, looking at the small human ship in the distance. After that day, the hegemony changed their rules about attacking human ships. On the Resilient Dawn, Oyuna was sending out the emergency broadcast that was making traders and warriors afraid across 3 star systems. But she was also doing something else. She was recording everything that was happening. Personal log. Communications Officer Oyuna. She spoke into her recorder. "If anyone finds this recording, know that the crew of the Resilient Dawn chose to fight rather than surrender. We are not victims. We are making a choice." Captain Lee Jun walked around his ship, talking to each crew member. Song Bin, the cargo master, was already looking at their remaining fuel cells with new eyes, not as fuel, but as explosives. Lim He, the mechanic, was checking the gravity generators, thinking about how to turn them into weapons. Captain Parkana said as she met him in the engine room. "I've been thinking about what we discussed. The fusion reactor can be overloaded, but it will take time to set up safely." Lee Jun nodded. "How much time? 20 minutes? Maybe 30? But Captain, once we start the process, there's no going back." Meanwhile, Chai Wan, the navigator, was working on something very important. She was calculating the exact distance and speed needed to make sure that when their ship exploded, it would take the Vorthok battlecruiser with them back on the Vorthok ship. Captain Yoon Seok was growing impatient. Why haven't they surrendered yet? He asked his crew. Their ship is helpless. His first officer, a scarred veteran named Thokroll, looked worried. Captain, maybe we should listen to the old stories. The other species never attack human ships when they're desperate. There might be a reason. Captain Yoon Seok was too proud and greedy to listen. He wanted the human ship's cargo, and he wanted to show the galaxy that Vorthox feared no one. Prepare the boarding shuttles, he ordered. We'll take that ship and show these humans what happens when they threaten the mighty Vortex. What Captain Yoon Seok did not understand was that across the galaxy, the unspoken rule existed for a very good reason. When you corner a human ship, that has nothing left to lose. You don't get a victory. You get a lesson that the entire galaxy remembers forever, and that lesson was about to begin. Captain Lee Jun stood in the center of his ship's bridge and pressed a button that had never been pressed before. The button was red and had clear writing above it that said, Protocol 7, Emergency Authorization Only. Every human ship had this button, but most captains hoped they would never need to use it. A calm computer voice filled the entire ship through the communication system. Protocol 7 is now active. All crew members report to emergency stations. Repeat, Protocol 7 is now active. Every person on the Resilient Dawn knew what this meant. They had trained for this moment, but they had hoped it would never come. Protocol 7 was the last option when there was no escape and no hope of rescue. It meant turning their ship into a weapon, even if it killed them all. Song Bin, the cargo master, ran to the fuel storage area. His hands moved quickly as he opened the control panels for the fuel cells. These cells normally powered their ship's engines, but now he was changing them into something much more dangerous. He connected wire after wire, turning each fuel cell into a bomb that could be set off when needed. Computer, record my actions, Song Bin said as he worked. If someone finds this ship later, they need to know we chose this. Nobody forced us. We're doing this to protect other humans who might face the same choice. In the engine room, Park Hannah was working on the most dangerous job of all. She was carefully changing the settings on the fusion reactor that powered their ship. Fusion reactors were built with many safety systems to prevent explosions. Now, she was removing those safety systems one by one. Her assistant, Lim Hee, was working beside her with the gravity generators. These machines created artificial gravity to keep everyone's feet on the floor. But Lim, he was turning them into weapons. When activated, they would create small areas where gravity was so strong it could crush metal. How much time do we have? Lim, he asked, sweat running down his face. The Vorthak ship will reach us in 18 minutes, Park Hannah replied. We need at least 15 minutes to finish the reactor changes safely. It's going to be very close. On the bridge, Chai Wan was doing the most important calculation of her life. She was figuring out exactly how fast their ship needed to move, and in what direction to make sure it would hit the Vorthok battlecruiser. Her computer showed different paths and speeds, but only one would guarantee that both ships would be destroyed. Captain, she said, without looking up from her work, I've found the right course, but we need to be within 2 kilometers of their ship when we detonate. Any further away, and they might survive the explosion. Kim Tae, the weapons officer, was preparing their few remaining weapons. Not to fight the enemy ship, but to make sure the Vorthok boarding parties would not be able to stop their plan. He placed small explosive charges in the hallways and prepared traps that would slow down any enemies who got inside their ship. Dr. Chue Min was doing something that broke her heart. She was preparing medicine that would help the crew die, quickly and without pain if they chose it. Some crew members might prefer this to dying in the explosion or being captured by the vortex. I became a doctor to save lives, she whispered to herself as she prepared the medicine. But sometimes the kindest thing is to prevent suffering. The Vorthok battlecruiser Bone Render was getting closer. Captain Yoon Seok stood on his bridge, watching the human ship through his main screen. He was confused because the humans were not trying to run away or hide. Instead, their ship was moving in a straight line toward his much larger vessel. "Captain," his sensor officer called out. "The human ship is accelerating directly toward us. Their engines are running at maximum power." Yoon Seok laughed. "They think they can ram us. It's their tiny ship against our battlecruiser. Until, God, just break apart when they hit our shields." But old Grokmer was not laughing. He was reading the sensor data very carefully, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The human ship was not just accelerating, it was also getting hotter, much hotter than any normal ship should be. "Captain," Grokmer said in a worried voice, "something is wrong. Their ship's heat signature is increasing rapidly. That's not normal for a cargo vessel." On the Resilient Dawn, the crew was finishing their preparations. Beek, Sue, and Hong Jun, the security officers, had turned the cargo bay into a deadly maze. They used magnetic field generators to create invisible walls that would confuse invaders. They also set up motion sensors connected to explosive charges. "If they want our cargo," Beek Sue said grimly, "they'll have to walk through hell to get it." Yuna was still broadcasting their emergency signal, but now she was also recording final messages from each crew member. These messages would be found later by whoever investigated the wreckage. "My name is Nam Jae," the tactical officer said into the recorder. "I want my family to know that I died fighting for something I believed in. We could have surrendered, but then other human ships would face the same threat. Our sacrifice will save lives." The Vorthok boarding shuttles launched. From the Bone Render, 20 armed warriors in each shuttle, ready to take control of the human ship and steal everything valuable. They expected to find scared humans hiding in their rooms, begging for mercy. They had no idea what was waiting for them. As the shuttles approached, Captain Lee Jun made a ship-wide announcement. "All crew members, this is your captain. In 10 minutes, we will show the galaxy why you never corner a human ship. We are not victims. We are not prey. We are humans, and we choose how our story ends." The first Vorthok shuttle reached the Resilient Dawn and attached to the cargo bay door. The pirates used cutting tools to break through the hull. They expected to find a normal cargo bay full of goods to steal. Instead, they found Beek Sue waiting for them with a weapon in each hand and a smile on his face. "Welcome aboard," he said, just before the lights went out and the maze of death activated. Back on the Bone Render, Captain Yoon Seok was finally starting to understand that something was very wrong. His boarding teams were reporting heavy resistance and strange readings from inside the human ship. Some of his warriors were not responding to radio calls. "Sir," his communications officer said with fear in his voice, "I'm picking up massive energy readings from the human ship. Their reactor is operating far beyond safe limits." Yoon Seok's eyes went wide as the truth finally hit him. The humans were not trying to escape, okay? They were not trying to surrender. They were turning their entire ship into a bomb, and they were planning to take his ship with them when they died, for the first time in his life. The proud Vorthok captain felt real fear. He had cornered a human ship that had nothing left to lose, and now he understood why every other species in the galaxy knew better than to do such a thing. "All shuttles, return immediately," he shouted into his communicator. "All shuttles, abandon the boarding and return to the ship now." But it was too late. The human ship was only 3 kilometers away and getting closer every second. And in the engine room of the Resilient Dawn, Park Hannah's hand was moving toward the final switch that would seal everyone's fate. The distance between the two ships was now only 2 kilometers and shrinking fast. Captain Lee Jun sat in the pilot's seat, his hands steady on the controls, even though his heart was beating like thunder. He had transferred all remaining power, from life support lights, and everything else to the engines and the structural fields that held the ship together. The resilient Dawn groaned, shook as it pushed beyond its design limits. Metal beams bent under the stress, and warning lights flashed red throughout the ship, but the ship held together through pure human engineering and the determination of its crew. 60 seconds to impact, Chai-Wan announced from her navigation station. Her voice was calm, but tears ran down her face. She was thinking about her younger brother, who was studying to become a pilot, just like her, in the cargo bay. The battle had begun. The Vorthok warriors who had boarded the ship found themselves trapped in a nightmare maze created by Beak, Su, and Hong Jun. Invisible magnetic walls blocked their paths, forcing them into narrow corridors where the humans waited with weapons. Ready, the first group of Vorthok pirates ran into the cargo bay expecting to find boxes of goods to steal. Instead, they found darkness. The lights had been turned off. The humans were using night vision equipment they had taken from the ship's emergency supplies. Big Su fired his weapon from behind a stack of cargo containers. The blast of energy lit up the dark bay for a moment, showing the confused faces of the alien invaders. 3 Vorthoks fell before they could even see where the shot came from. "This is our ship," Hong Jun shouted as he moved to a new position. "You want our cargo? Come and take it." Vorthoks tried to spread out, but the magnetic field generators created invisible walls that pushed them into kill zones. Every step they took was guided by the human defenders who knew every centimeter of their own ship. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Pak Sol, the quartermaster, had turned the ship's medical supplies into weapons. The oxygen tanks used for emergency breathing were now fuel for massive explosions. The medical alcohol became firebombs. Even the medicines were mixed with chemicals from the cleaning supplies to create poisonous gas. Medical bay secured. Pak Sol reported over the communication system. "Any pirates who come here won't leave alive." In the hydroponics lab, where they grew food, On Yan and Ko Jang were making their final preparations. The plant fertilizers had been mixed with fuel to create powerful explosives. The water pipes had been filled with acid from the ship's batteries. When the Vorthoks tried to enter, they would face a hell of fire and poison. "We could have been farmers on a peaceful world," Anyan said to her partner as they finished their deadly work. "Instead, we're warriors defending our ship." Ko Jang smiled sadly. "At least we're warriors together." On the bridge of the Bone Render, panic was spreading like a disease. Captain Yoon Seok watched his boarding parties disappear one by one from his sensors. The few warriors who were still alive reported impossible things. Walls that were not there but could not be crossed. Explosions that came from nowhere. Humans who fought like demons instead of running away. Captain, his tactical officer, screamed over the noise of alarms. "The human ship is now 1.8 kilometers away. They're not slowing down." Impact in 40 seconds. Yoon Seok's pride finally broke. He realized that he had made the worst mistake of his life. But it might be too late to fix it. "All power to engines," he ordered. "Try to move us away from their path." But the Bone Render was a huge ship designed for battle, not for quick movements. It would take minutes to change course, and they only had seconds. Back on the Resilient Dawn, Park Hannah stood in front of the fusion reactor control panel. Her hand was on the final switch that would remove the last safety system. Once she flipped the switch, the reactor would begin to overload. There would be no way to stop the explosion after that. "Captain," she called over the communication system. "Ready for final detonation. On your command." Captain Lee Jun looked at the distance meter. 1.5 kilometers. The Vorthok ship filled their entire front window now. He could see the enemy trying desperately to move away, but they were too big and too slow. "All crew members," he announced over the ship's speakers. "It has been my greatest honor to serve with you. Your families will know that you died as heroes. Your sacrifice will be remembered forever. In the cargo bay, Beak, Su, and Hung Jun were down to their last ammunition. Vorthok bodies lay scattered around the bay, but more enemies kept coming. The two humans stood back to back, surrounded but not defeated. Any regrets? Hung Jun asked as he reloaded his weapon. Only that we won't see what happens next, Beak Su replied. The Vorthoks rushed forward in a final desperate attack. Both humans fell fighting, but they had done their job. They had delayed the enemy long enough for the ship to reach its target. In the engine room, On Yan and Kyojang heard the explosions from the cargo bay. They knew their friends were dead. Without speaking, they activated their own trap. The hydroponics lab filled with fire and poison gas, killing the Vorthok warriors who had just entered. The two humans died holding hands, knowing they had saved their ship from being captured. 1 kilometer, Chai Wan announced. Her voice was steady now. Fear had been replaced by calm acceptance. On the Vorthok ship, Captain Yoon Seok made one last desperate attempt to save his crew. He opened a communication channel to the human ship. Captain Lee Jun, he called out. I surrender. I was wrong to attack you. Please stop your attack. We can negotiate. The Lee Jun's response was cold and final. You had your chance to negotiate. You chose to corner a human ship that had nothing left to lose. Now you learned the price of that choice. 0.8 kilometers, Chai Wan said. Park Hannah's hand was steady on the final switch. The fusion reactor was already running beyond safe limits. All she had to do was flip this one switch, and the explosion would begin. 0.6 kilometers. Captain Yoon Seok tried one more time to escape his fate. He ordered his weapons to fire at the human ship, hoping to destroy it before it could ram them. Energy beams struck the resilient Dawn's shields, but the humans had put all their remaining power into those shields. The ship kept coming. 0.4 kilometers. Lee Jun turned to look at his crew one last time. Oyuna was still at her communication station, sending their final message to any ship that might hear it. Kim Tae was ready at the weapons controls, prepared to fire their last shots. Chai Wan watched her navigation screen with professional. These people had trusted him with their lives, and now they were trusting him with their deaths. 0.2 kilometers. Now, Park Hannah, Captain Lee Jun said quietly, send us home. In the engine room, Park Hannah flipped the final switch. The fusion reactor safety systems shut down completely. The reaction that had powered their ship for so many years began to run wild, building toward an explosion that would be seen across 3 star systems. Stun, she said into her communicator. 30 seconds until detonation. The two ships were so close now that they filled each other's windows. The Vorthok crew stared in horror at the human ship bearing down on them like an angel of death. Some of them tried to run to escape pods, but there was no time that Captain Yoon Seok stood on his bridge. Finally, understanding why every other species in the galaxy feared to corner a desperate human ship. As the resilient Dawn closed the final distance, his last words were recorded by his ship's computer. Tell all Vorthok captains, he said in a broken voice. Never corner a human ship. Never. They don't just die. They take you with them, okay? The two ships collided in a blaze of light that could be seen from orbit around distant planets. The explosion that followed turned both vessels into expanding clouds of metal and energy, creating a new star that burned for several minutes before fading into space dust. In those final moments, 12 humans had chosen to die rather than surrender, and in doing so, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. 6 months after the explosion that destroyed both the resilient Dawn and the Bone Render, the story had spread to every corner of the galaxy. The blast had been so bright that ships 3 star systems away had seen it. The radiation from the explosion created a small nebula that would glow for centuries. marking the place where 12 humans chose death over surrender. Commander Telvash of the Galactic Trade Federation arrived at the wreckage site just hours after the explosion. His patrol ship had been racing toward the emergency signal when the sky lit up with the brightness of a small sun. By the time he reached the coordinates, there was nothing left but twisted metal and cosmic dust. His crew found 3 Warthog escape pods floating in space. The survivors inside were barely alive, their minds broken by what they had witnessed. When the medical team tried to help them, the Warthogs could only repeat the same words over and over again. Never corner a human ship. Never corner a human ship. The official report that Commander Telvash filed became the most read document in Galactic Trade Federation history. Every species with ships in space wanted to know exactly what had happened in the Kepler Nebula. The report was simple but terrifying. Human cargo vessel Resilient Dawn, faced with certain capture by Vorthok pirates, chose to convert their ship into a weapon rather than surrender. All 12 crew members died in the resulting explosion, which also destroyed the attacking vessel and its crew of 200 warriors. No human distress calls for surrender were detected. Recommendation: all Federation members should provide immediate assistance to any human vessel reporting supply shortages. In the weeks that followed, the story grew with each telling. Traders shared it in space stations across the galaxy. Military academies added it to their required reading. Even children on distant worlds heard simplified versions of the tale about the brave humans who refused to give up on the hegemony homeworld. Fleet Commander Veltar stood before a room full of his best captains. Behind him, a large screen showed images of the wreckage site. The metal pieces were still hot from the explosion, glowing red against the darkness of space. "Gentlemen," Commander Veltar said in his deep voice, "today we are changing our engagement protocols regarding human vessels. New orders are now in effect for all hegemony ships." He pressed a button and new text appeared on the screen. The captains read it with surprise and some confusion. If a human ship signals distress due to supply shortages, all hegemony vessels will maintain a minimum distance of 10 kilometers and offer assistance. Under no circumstances will any hegemony ship attempt to board, capture, or threaten a human vessel showing signs of desperation. Any captain who violates this order will face court-martial. One young captain raised his hand. "Sir, why are we afraid of human cargo ships? Our battle cruisers are much more powerful." Commander Veltar's expression became very serious. "Captain Mortek, let me explain something about human psychology. Most species, when faced with certain death, will choose survival, even if it means slavery or humiliation. Humans are different, and they have nothing left to lose. They don't just accept death, they weaponize it." He pressed another button, and the screen showed data from 20 different incidents over the past 50 years. In every case, cornered human ships had chosen destruction over surrender. "Look at these numbers," the commander continued. In every incident where humans were cornered and desperate, they took their attackers with them. The survival rate for enemies who cornered desperate human ships is less than 5%. This is not bravery or stupidity. This is calculated psychological warfare that has been passed down through their culture for generations. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, the Zenthari Council was holding an emergency meeting. Elder Crixmel, the oldest and wisest member of their species, was updating their official database with new information about humans. The previous entry described humans as peaceful traders and skilled engineers. Elder Crixmel said to the assembled council members, "This was accurate, but incomplete. We must add a warning that applies specifically to human vessels in distress." A new database entry was carefully written and reviewed by the entire council before being approved. Species: human, general behavior, peaceful, curious, excellent engineers and traders. Warning: When cornered or threatened while in desperate circumstances, humans exhibit unique psychological behavior. They will choose mutual destruction over surrender. Do not threaten human ships, reporting supply shortages or technical failures. Offer assistance immediately. Failure to follow this guidance has resulted in 100% casualty rates among hostile forces. The entry was sent to every Centauri ship and trading post in known space. Within days, it had been copied and shared by other species who had learned to respect Centauri wisdom. Back at the wreckage site, something unexpected was happening. Ships from many different species were arriving, not to salvage the debris, but to leave something behind. Small memorial beacons were placed around the area where the two ships had died. Each beacon carried messages in dozens of different languages. Can 3 merchant ship left a beacon that said to the humans who chose freedom over life, "Your courage is remembered." A Delari science vessel placed a marker reading, "Heroes sleep here. Let no one forget their sacrifice." Even former enemies left tributes. A reformed hegemony captain who had once been saved by human traders left a beacon with a simple message: "Thank you for teaching us that some things are worth more than survival." The memorial site became an unofficial navigation landmark. Pilots would change course just to pass by and pay their respects. The glowing debris field became known throughout the galaxy as Human's Rest, a place where 12 people had chosen to die rather than let evil triumph. On Earth, Lee Jun's sister Lee Myra received a message from the Human Colonial Authority. Her brother's ship and crew were being honored with the highest decoration for valor. But more importantly, she was being offered command of a new vessel. The ship was named Resilient Dawn, too. Built with the most advanced technology humanity could provide. It was faster, stronger, and better armed than its predecessor, but it also carried the same red button in the captain's ready room. Protocol 7 was still available if needed. Captain Lee Myra stood on the bridge of her new ship as it prepared for its first mission. The crew was young and eager, ready to explore the galaxy and trade with alien species. They had no idea how famous their ship's name had become among the stars as they prepared to leave Earth's orbit. Lee Myra opened a sealed message that had been left for her by her brother. Heat was his final transmission, recorded moments before the explosion. To whoever commands the next Resilient Dawn, the message began in Lee Jun's calm voice. Remember that we did not die as victims. We died as humans, choosing our own fate. The galaxy now knows that humans cannot be cornered or broken. Use this reputation wisely. Help those who need it, but never forget that some things are worth more than life itself. Lee Myra closed the message and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien captains were teaching their crews about the unspoken rule. Pirates were choosing easier targets. Merchants were offering help instead of taking advantage of desperate ships. Her brother and his crew had died, but their sacrifice had made the galaxy a little bit safer for everyone who followed the peaceful path between the stars. As the Resilient Dawn, too, jumped to hyperspace on its first mission, its captain carried with her the knowledge that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the willingness to use it. Even at the ultimate cost, the unspoken rule will continue to protect human ships for generations to come. Never corner a human vessel that's running low on supplies, because humans don't just die, they take their enemies with them, and they make sure the galaxy never forgets the lesson in the vast darkness between the stars. 12 names were now written in light, remembered forever as the crew who chose freedom over surrender and taught the universe to respect the human spirit.